The bridge of the Eternal Dominion hummed with quiet activity. Admiral Kethavar stood before the massive viewing screen, his forearms crossed behind his back. The stars stretched out before his fleet like scattered diamonds on black cloth. Soon, very soon, another world would fall to the Zephyrian hegemony. "Admiral," his communication officer called out, her voice sharp with attention. "We are receiving a transmission from the human homeworld." Kethavar turned his massive head toward the officer. His red eyes glowed with interest. "From Earth?" "Put it on the main screen." The image flickered to life. A human woman stood in what looked like ruins. Behind her, smoke rose from broken buildings. The sky above was dark with ash and fire. She wore simple clothes, torn and dirty. Her face was tired, but her eyes were steady. "I am Ambassador Sarah Morrison," the woman said. Her voice was calm, too calm for someone standing in destruction. "I speak for what remains of the human governments of Earth." Kethavar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Around the bridge, his officers smiled with their sharp teeth. The humans were finally ready to surrender. "For 3 years," Morrison continued, "we offered to talk. We sent messages of peace. We asked for meetings. We tried to find a way for our species to live together in this galaxy." The Admiral nodded. Yes, the humans had tried to negotiate. They had been weak, always asking for mercy, always trying to avoid war. It had been pathetic. "We offered friendship even as you burned our colonies," Morrison said. "We begged for the lives of our children even as you killed them. We asked for mercy even as you showed none." Behind Morrison, the camera showed more of the ruined city. Bodies lay in the streets. Buildings were nothing but broken stone and twisted metal. It was clear that Earth was dying. "You answered our calls for peace with silence," Morrison said. "You responded to our offers of cooperation with death. You have shown us what you truly are." Kethavar waved his hand dismissively. "End the transmission," he ordered. "Sir," the communication officer said, "there's more." "More begging?" Kethavar asked. "More crying for mercy they will not receive." "I don't think so, sir." Morrison was still speaking. "We are not a warlike people. In our history we have fought terrible wars. But we have always tried to choose peace when we could. We build more than we destroy. We create more than we kill." The Admiral watched with growing boredom. These humans never learned. Even facing the end of their species, they still spoke of peace and building. "But we are not defenseless," Morrison said. Her voice changed. It became harder, colder. "And we are not stupid." Something in her tone made Kethavar pay attention again. "Our nature has always been to protect what we love," Morrison continued. "Our families, our children, our future. You have forced us to make a choice. You have shown us that mercy is seen as weakness, that kindness is seen as cowardice." Behind Morrison, the camera panned across the ruined city. But now Kethavar noticed something strange. The destruction looked old. The fires were controlled burns. The bodies in the streets were not fresh. "You have made our choice for us," Morrison said. "You have shown us that in this galaxy only the strong survive. Only those willing to use violence get to keep what they love." The image changed. Instead of showing the ruined city, it showed space above Earth. Massive ships were lifting off from the planet's surface. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They looked like civilian ships, cargo vessels, and passenger transports. "Our people are leaving," Morrison said. "But not because we are running away. We are spreading out. We are going to places you cannot follow. We are taking our knowledge, our technology, and our memory of what you did to us." Kethavar frowned. The evacuation ships were moving in strange patterns. They were not fleeing toward the edge of the system. Instead, they were spreading out in all directions, some even heading toward his own fleet. "You called us weak," Morrison said. "You thought we were easy prey because we offered peace. You were wrong." The scene changed again. Now it showed the inside of what looked like a massive underground facility. Humans in strange suits were working on devices that Kethavar did not recognize. The technology looked wrong somehow, like it followed different rules of physics. "For 50 years we have been preparing," Morrison said. "Not for war. We hoped war would never come. But we prepared for survival. We prepared for the day when we would have to choose between dying with dignity and living with purpose." "What is she talking about?" Kethavar demanded. His intelligence reports had said the humans were technologically inferior. Their weapons were primitive. Their ships were slow and weak. "We studied every species you conquered," Morrison continued. "We learned from every world you destroyed. We watched how you fought, how you thought, how you planned. We prepared for this day. The image showed more of the underground facility. Massive machines hummed with power. Scientists worked at controls that seemed to bend light around them. In the background, huge doors were opening, revealing chambers filled with strange, glowing devices. You wanted to see what humans are capable of when pushed to the edge, Morrison said. When forced to choose between extinction and survival. When made to decide between mercy and justice. Morrison stepped closer to the camera. For the first time, Kethvar could see her eyes clearly. They were not the eyes of a defeated enemy. They were the eyes of someone who had made a terrible decision and was at peace with it. "This is our final message to you," Morrison said. "We offered you mercy. We extended our hand in friendship. We tried to build a future where our children could grow up together in peace." The underground facility was fully visible now. Kethvar could see that it was enormous, stretching for kilometers in every direction. Thousands of humans were working at stations, preparing machines that looked like they could tear reality apart. "You rejected our mercy," Morrison said. "You spat on our friendship. You chose to make our children orphans in our world's graveyards." Morrison paused. For a moment, she looked very tired, very sad. Then her expression hardened again. "Now you will learn what humanity is truly capable of," she said. "Now you will discover why every intelligent species in the galaxy learned to fear us long before we learned to reach for the stars." The transmission ended abruptly. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion was silent. "Sir?" the communication officer asked quietly. Kethvar stared at the blank screen. Something cold was growing in his chest, something he had not felt in many years. It took him a moment to recognize it. Fear. "Contact the other ships," he ordered. "Tell them to prepare for immediate bombardment of the planet. I want Earth reduced to dust within the hour." "Yes, sir," his weapons officer replied. "Should we capture any of the evacuation ships?" Kethvar thought about Morrison's calm eyes, about the strange underground facility, about the ships spreading out in patterns that made no sense. "No," he said slowly. "Destroy them all. Leave nothing alive." But even as he gave the order, Admiral Kethvar wondered if he was already too late. The Zephyrian fleet moved through space like a pack of metal sharks. Admiral Kethvar watched his sensors as they approached Earth's solar system. His ships had destroyed hundreds of worlds before this one. Earth would be no different. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out, "I'm reading strange energy signatures from the debris fields around the outer planets." Kethvar looked at the display. Scattered around Jupiter and Saturn were the remains of what looked like old mining stations and cargo ships. His intelligence reports had said these were abandoned when the humans retreated to Earth. "Just space junk," he said. "Continue course to Earth." But as his fleet moved closer, the debris began to move. Old cargo ships that had looked dead suddenly came to life. Their engines fired, and they turned toward the Zephyrian ships. What had seemed like broken mining equipment unfolded into weapon platforms. "Sir," his weapons officer shouted. "Those ships are targeting us." "Impossible," Kethvar said. "Our intelligence said the humans had no military left." The first human ship fired. A beam of pure energy struck the Eternal Dominion's shields. The entire bridge shook. Alarms began to sound. "Shields down to 80%, the weapons officer reported. "Sir, that's more power than our own main guns." More human ships were activating throughout the system. They had been hiding among the debris, disguised as wrecked vessels. Now they revealed themselves as something else entirely. Their weapons glowed with energy that made space itself bend and twist. "Return fire," Kethvar ordered. His ships unleashed their full power at the human vessels. Plasma cannons and particle beams lit up the darkness of space. But when the light faded, the human ships were still there. Some kind of shield surrounded them, a barrier that seemed to absorb energy and throw it back twice as strong. "Sir," his communication officer said, her voice shaking, "I'm receiving a transmission from Earth." "Put it through." A new human appeared on the screen. This one was different from Ambassador Morrison. She wore a white coat and stood in what looked like a laboratory. Behind her, massive machines hummed with power. "I am Dr. Sarah Chen," the woman said, "director of the Lazarus Protocol." "What is the Lazarus Protocol?" Kethvar demanded. Dr. Chen smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "The Lazarus Protocol is what happens when you force a peaceful species to choose survival over morality." The image behind Dr. Chen changed. It showed the interior of a massive underground complex. The facility stretched as far as the eye could see, filled with technology that looked like it came from nightmares, machines that twisted space and time, devices that could tear matter apart at the level of atoms. For 50 years we have been preparing, Dr. Chen said. We studied every species you conquered. We learned from every world you destroyed. We took the best of your technology and made it better. Impossible, Kethvar said. Humans are primitives. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Was, Dr. Chen corrected. Our technology was behind yours. But you made a mistake. You assumed we would stay primitive. You thought we would never learn. On the screen, humans in strange suits worked with devices that hurt to look at. They moved through the laboratory like they were dancing, their movements too fast and too precise to be natural. You see, Dr. Chen continued, humans have a gift. We adapt, we learn. We take what exists and make it into something new, something better. Another explosion rocked the Eternal Dominion. Through the view screen, Kethvar could see one of his destroyers breaking apart. A human ship no larger than a fighter had torn through its hull like it was made of paper. How? He whispered. Temporal displacement weapons, Dr. Chen explained calmly. We can age your ship's hulls by centuries and seconds. Gravity manipulators that crush your vessels like insects. Quantum disruptors that unmake matter itself. You're bluffing, Kethvar said, but his voice shook. Dr. Chen gestured to something off-screen. Computer, show Admiral Kethvar what happened to the Hegemony's Third Fleet. The image changed. It showed a massive space battle. Hundreds of Zephyrian ships faced a much smaller human force. Kethvar recognized the Third Fleet. They had been sent to destroy a human colony 6 months ago. The reports had said they were successful. But now he watched as human ships moved like ghosts through space. They appeared and disappeared at will. Their weapons turned proud Zephyrian battleships into clouds of dust. In minutes, the entire Third Fleet was gone. The Third Fleet was destroyed months ago, Dr. Chen said. We let you think they had succeeded. We let you think the colony was dead. It was easier than explaining why 3,000 Zephyrian ships had simply vanished. Kethvar felt his blood turn to ice. That's impossible. We received reports from the fleet. They confirmed the colony's destruction. You received the reports we wanted you to receive, Dr. Chen said. From ships we had captured. From crews we had convinced to cooperate. Another of Kethvar's ships exploded. Then another. His proud fleet was being torn apart by enemies that seemed to appear from nowhere and disappear just as quickly. But that's not even the best part, Dr. Chen continued. You see those evacuation ships you saw leaving Earth? They weren't running away. The image showed the human ships that had left Earth during Morrison's transmission, but now Kethvar could see what they really were. They were not civilian transports. They were warships disguised to look harmless, and they were spreading throughout the galaxy. Every refugee ship you let pass, Dr. Chen said. Every survivor you ignored. Every human you thought was too broken to be a threat. They were all part of the plan. What plan? Kethvar asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. The plan to save humanity, Dr. Chen said, and to make sure that species like yours never threaten anyone again. The battle around Earth was turning into a massacre. Kethvar's ships were outnumbered, outgunned, and completely outmatched. Weapons that should not exist were tearing through his fleet like they were made of tissue paper. Retreat, he ordered. All ships retreat to the outer system. But as his remaining ships tried to flee, they found their path blocked. More human vessels appeared, cutting off their escape routes. These ships were different from the others. They were larger, more powerful, and they moved with a precision that seemed impossible. There is no retreat, Dr. Chen said. There is no escape. You wanted to see what happens when humanity is pushed to the edge. Now you know. The image behind her changed one more time. It showed Earth itself, but not the dying world from Morrison's transmission. This Earth was alive, protected by shields that made it shimmer like a jewel. Massive structures rose from the planet's surface, reaching toward the stars. Earth was never in danger, Dr. Chen said. The destruction you saw was an illusion, a trick of light and technology. We wanted you to think you had won. We wanted you to come here thinking you were finishing off a defeated enemy. Kethvar stared at the screen in horror. Everything he had believed was wrong. Everything his intelligence had told him was a lie. This is impossible, he whispered. No, Dr. Chen said. This is humanity, and you are about to learn why we tried so hard to avoid this moment. The transmission ended. Around Admiral Kethvar, his bridge crew stared at their instruments in shock and fear. The proud Zephyrian fleet was being destroyed by an enemy they had thought was already defeated. And somewhere in the darkness of space, Human ships continued their deadly work. Captain Marcus Reed had been dead for 2 years. At least that's what the Zephyrian record said. His body had been found in the ruins of Colony 7, another casualty of the hegemony's expansion. His death had been confirmed. His DNA verified, his remains buried in a mass grave with 10,000 other humans, so Admiral Kethvar was very surprised when Captain Reed appeared on the bridge of the command ship Iron Talon with a plasma rifle in his hands. "Hello, Admiral," Reed said calmly, shooting 2 security guards before they could react. "We need to talk." The bridge erupted in chaos. Zephyrian officers drew their weapons and fired at the human intruder. But Reed moved like liquid lightning, dodging their shots and returning fire with deadly accuracy. In seconds, half the bridge crew was dead. "Impossible," Admiral Kethvar whispered from the view screen connection to his flagship. "You're dead." "I saw the reports myself," Reed smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Death is more complicated than you think, Admiral." "Especially for humans." Reed moved through the bridge like he owned it, checking control panels and accessing computer systems. The remaining Zephyrian crew backed away from him, afraid to get too close but unwilling to leave their posts. "You see," Reed continued, working at a control station, "when you killed me on Colony 7, you didn't just kill Captain Marcus Reed, you killed a father, a husband, a man who had spent his whole life believing that violence should always be the last choice." Reed's fingers flew over the alien controls as if he had been using them his whole life. Warning lights began flashing throughout the ship. Systems started shutting down one by one. "But humans are resourceful," Reed said. "We don't like staying dead, especially when we have work to finish." "What are you?" Admiral Kethvar demanded. "I'm what happens when you push humanity too far," Reed replied. "I'm what you created when you decided that mercy was weakness." The ship's main power core began to overload. Emergency alarms wailed through the corridors. The bridge crew looked at their instruments in horror as critical systems failed. "Stop him," Kethvar ordered, but it was too late. Reed had uploaded something into the ship's computer system. A virus, but not just any virus. This one was learning, adapting, spreading through the ship's networks faster than the crew could shut it down. "This is just the beginning," Reed said, backing toward an escape pod. "We're everywhere, Admiral. Every ship you thought was safe. Every base you thought was secure. Every world you thought you controlled." Reed paused at the escape pod door. "You wanted to hunt humans? Congratulations. Now you get to learn what it feels like to be the prey." The escape pod launched just as the Iron Talon exploded. The massive command ship broke apart in a ball of fire that lit up the surrounding space. But Reed's message was already spreading to other ships in the fleet. Across the Zephyrian Armada, similar scenes were playing out. Humans who had been declared dead were appearing on ships where they should not exist. They moved through the vessels like ghosts, sabotaging systems, gathering intelligence, and then vanishing before anyone could stop them. But these were not ordinary humans. They were something new, something that the Zephyrians had never encountered before. They moved too fast, thought too quickly, and knew too much about alien technology. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Kethvar watched his fleet tear itself apart from within. Ship after ship went dark or exploded or simply disappeared from sensors. His communications were being jammed by signals that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the hegemony capital." "Put it through," Kethvar ordered, hoping for reinforcements or new orders. But the face that appeared on the screen was human. A woman with silver eyes and skin that seemed to shimmer with its own light. Behind her, Kethvar could see what looked like the hegemony's most secure command center. "Hello, Admiral," the woman said. "My name is Elena Vasquez. I died 3 years ago when you destroyed the research station at Kepler 442. Kethvar's blood turned to ice. The research station had been classified as a military target. Every human on board had been killed. The destruction had been complete. Like Captain Reed, Elena continued, I found death to be temporary. You see, when you force a species to evolve or die, they tend to choose evolution. Behind Elena, Kethvar could see Zephyrian officers working at their stations. But something was wrong with them. They moved strangely, mechanically, like puppets being controlled by invisible strings. "What have you done?" Kethvar whispered. "We've done what we had to do," Elena replied. "We've taken control of your communication networks. Your supply lines, your intelligence services. We've been inside your government for months, Admiral. We know everything. The image changed to show a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked every major hegemony world and military base. But now green lines were spreading between them, connecting one system to another in a growing web. Every human you thought you killed, Elena explained. Every refugee ship you let pass, every survivor you ignored. They were all part of a larger plan. We've been preparing for this war since the day you first attacked us. This is impossible, Kethvar said. Humans don't have this technology. You don't have the knowledge to infiltrate our systems. Elena smiled. We do now. You taught us everything we needed to know. Every time you destroyed one of our worlds, we learned something new about your technology. Every time you captured our people, we gained access to your networks. The map showed more green lines spreading across the galaxy. But now Kethvar realized what they represented. They weren't just communication lines. They were supply routes, military positions, civilian populations, everything that made the hegemony function. You see, Elena continued, humans have a gift for learning from their enemies. We study, we adapt, we take what you've taught us and make it our own. Another explosion lit up space outside the Eternal Dominion. 2 more ships in Kethvar's fleet had just destroyed each other, their crews apparently convinced that the other vessel was controlled by human infiltrators. But that's not even the best part, Elena said. The best part is what we've been doing to your conquered worlds. The image changed again. It showed a planet that Kethvar recognized, Altair Prime, one of the hegemony's most important industrial worlds. But instead of the orderly factories and mining operations he expected to see, the planet was in chaos. Massive structures were burning. Slave populations were rioting in the streets. Every species you've conquered, Elena explained. Every world you've enslaved. Every population you've oppressed. We've been talking to them. We've been sharing our technology with them. We've been teaching them how to fight back. More planets appeared on the screen, dozens of them, all across hegemony space. All of them were in rebellion. All of them were using weapons and tactics that looked distinctly human. You wanted to show the galaxy that might makes right, Elena said. Instead, you've taught them that freedom is worth fighting for. You've given them a reason to unite against you. Admiral Kethvar stared at the images in horror. His empire was collapsing. Worlds that had been peaceful for decades were suddenly in open revolt. Military bases were going dark. Supply lines were being cut. This is just the beginning, Elena said. You've seen what humans can do when we're angry. Now you're going to learn what we can do when we're organized. The transmission ended. Around him, Kethvar's bridge crew looked at their instruments with growing panic. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. The hegemony was under attack on 1,000 fronts at once. And somewhere in the darkness of space, human ships continued their deadly work, turning the hunters into the hunted. Sir, his weapons officer said quietly. What are your orders? Admiral Kethvar looked at the chaos spreading across his fleet and his empire. For the first time in his long military career, he had no idea what to do. Run, he whispered, if we can. But as his remaining ships tried to retreat, they found human vessels waiting for them at every turn. The trap was complete. The galaxy's greatest predators had become prey, and humanity was just getting started. The war had been going on for 6 months, but Admiral Kethvar was only now beginning to understand what kind of enemy humanity really was. They didn't fight like any species the hegemony had ever faced. They didn't just want to win battles or capture territory. They wanted to destroy everything the Zephyrians had built, and they were succeeding. Sir, his intelligence officer reported from the bridge of his new flagship, the Vengeance. The Eternal Dominion had been destroyed 3 months ago by a human strike team that had somehow materialized inside the ship's reactor core. We've lost contact with the Vega sector. Kethvar looked at the strategic display. Red markers showed where hegemony forces had been driven back or destroyed. Green markers showed human positions. There was far too much green on the map. How many ships? He asked. 12 battle groups, sir. 300 vessels. And the humans used how many ships to destroy them? The intelligence officer looked uncomfortable. Intelligence suggests no more than 20 human vessels, sir. Kethvar closed his eyes. 20 ships against 300. The numbers made no sense. Nothing about this war made sense anymore. What about the Rigel colonies? He asked. In full revolt, sir. The slave populations have captured the orbital defense platforms. They're using our own weapons against us. How did they learn to operate our systems? The humans taught them, sir. They've been broadcasting technical manuals and training programs across the galaxy. Any species with basic intelligence can learn to use our technology against us. The intelligence officer paused, then added quietly, "Sir, they're not just teaching weapons. They're teaching science, medicine, engineering. They're trying to uplift every species in the galaxy." Kethvar opened his eyes. "What do you mean?" "The humans aren't just liberating our slave world, sir. They're educating them. They're giving them technology that we've kept secret for centuries. They're making them equal partners instead of conquered subjects." This was worse than Kethvar had imagined. The hegemony's power had always been based on technological superiority. They conquered primitive species and kept them dependent on Zephyrian knowledge. But if the humans were sharing advanced technology freely, "Show me the latest intelligence reports," he ordered. The display changed to show intercepted human communications. But these weren't military messages. They were educational broadcasts, scientific data, cultural exchanges. The humans were transmitting the combined knowledge of hundreds of species across the galaxy. They're creating an alliance, Kethvar realized. Not just a military alliance, a knowledge-sharing alliance. Yes, sir. Every species that joins them gains access to the entire database. They're calling it the Galactic Commons, a shared repository of science and culture that belongs to everyone. Kethvar felt something cold settle in his stomach. The hegemony ruled through fear and ignorance. They kept conquered species fighting each other instead of working together. But the humans were doing the opposite. They were uniting former enemies against a common threat. "Sir," the communication officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through." The screen showed a human man in what looked like a military uniform, but it was unlike any uniform Kethvar had seen. It bore symbols from dozens of different species, as if it represented an alliance rather than a single world. "Admiral Kethvar," the human said, "my name is Commander David Park. I speak for the Galactic Liberation Front." More humans pretending to represent others. Kethvar sneered. "Actually," Commander Park said, "I'm speaking for quite a few species today." The image expanded to show Park standing in what looked like a massive command center. But the crew around him wasn't human. Kethvar recognized at least 20 different species, all working together at control stations. "The Altarians send their regards," Park said. "They remember how you strip-mined their homeworld. The vegan refugees wanted me to thank you for teaching them the value of freedom, and the Centauri Collective asked me to tell you that they've always hated your guts." Each species Park mentioned appeared on the screen. Former slaves, former refugees, former enemies of each other. Now they were all working together, all united by their hatred of the hegemony. "This is what you created," Park continued. "For centuries you kept the galaxy divided. You made sure different species could never work together. You convinced them that cooperation was weakness." "It is weakness," Kethvar said. "Is it?" Park asked. "Because right now, we have a combined fleet of over 10,000 ships from 47 different species. They all learned to work together by fighting against you." The display showed the true scope of the alliance. Ships from dozens of worlds all bearing the symbols of the Galactic Liberation Front. It was the largest fleet Kethvar had ever seen. "But we're not here to gloat," Park said. "We're here to make you an offer." "Surrender?" Kethvar asked. "Redemption?" Kethvar blinked. "What?" "You have a choice," Park explained. "You can keep fighting this war that you've already lost. You can watch your empire burn while your people die for the pride of leaders who led them into this disaster." Park paused, his expression serious. "Or you can help us build something better." "I will never surrender to inferior species," Kethvar snarled. "Who's inferior?" Park asked. "The species that built an empire through conquest and fear? Or the species that learned to work together despite centuries of being enemies?" The screen showed more images from across the galaxy. Former slave worlds were rebuilding, but now they were doing it together. Zephyrian colonies that had surrendered were being integrated into the alliance as equals. Even some Zephyrian civilians were working alongside former enemies. "Your empire is finished," Park said. "Your military is defeated. Your government is in exile. Your people are scattered across the galaxy. You can either help them find a new future, or you can let your pride destroy what's left of them." "And if I refuse?" Park's expression didn't change. Then you'll learn what human justice looks like when it's applied without mercy. The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar alone with his thoughts. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders that he didn't know how to give. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "long-range sensors are detecting multiple fleets approaching our position." "How many ships?" "At least 5,000, sir. Maybe more. They're coming from all directions." Kethvar looked at the tactical display. Green markers were closing in from every side. His remaining fleet of 200 ships was surrounded by an enemy force 25 times larger. "Shall I give the order to attack?" his weapons officer asked. Kethvar stared at the screen. 200 ships against 5,000. His people against the entire galaxy. Pride against reality. For the first time in his life, Admiral Kethvar began to wonder if the hegemony had been wrong about everything. "Sir?" the weapons officer asked again. Kethvar closed his eyes and thought about Commander Park's offer. Redemption. A chance to help build something better instead of watching everything burn. "Stand down all weapons," he said quietly. "Sir, I said stand down all weapons. Open a communication channel to the human fleet." "Admiral," his tactical officer protested, "we can't surrender. The hegemony doesn't surrender." Kethvar looked around his bridge at the officers who had served him faithfully for so many years. Good soldiers following orders from leaders who had led them into a war they couldn't win. "The hegemony is dead," he said. "It died the moment we decided that might makes right. It died when we chose conquest over cooperation. It died when we forgot that the strongest societies are built on partnership, not domination." He stood up from his command chair. "Open the channel. It's time to find out if humans really mean what they say about second chances." The communication channel opened. Commander Park's face appeared on the screen again. "Admiral," Park said, "have you made your decision?" Kethvar looked one last time at the tactical display showing his surrounded fleet. Then he looked at Park. "Yes," he said. "I want to know more about this alliance of yours." "Good," Park said. "Because we have a lot of work to do." 2 years had passed since Admiral Kethvar's surrender, but the war was not over. Some Zephyrians had chosen to join the Galactic Liberation Front and work toward a better future. Others had retreated to the edges of known space, determined to rebuild their empire through force today. That choice would be decided once and for all. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the orbital station New Geneva, looking down at the planet below. Earth looked beautiful from orbit, blue and green and alive. It was hard to believe that this peaceful world had become the center of the galaxy's greatest military force. "Ma'am," her aide reported, "the final hegemony stronghold is refusing to surrender. Admiral Thakmore is broadcasting threats across all frequencies." "What kind of threats?" Chen asked. "He's promising to exterminate every human in the galaxy. He says the Zephyrian Empire will rise again and finish what they started." Chen nodded. She had expected this. Some people never learned. Some people would choose death over change, destruction over growth. "Show me the tactical situation," she said. The holographic display lit up, showing the Zarian system at the edge of the galaxy. The last hegemony fleet was gathered there, nearly 1,000 ships, commanded by officers who refused to accept that their empire was finished. Surrounding them was the full might of the Galactic Liberation Front. Over 20,000 ships from 63 different species, the largest fleet in galactic history. "They're outnumbered 20 to 1, Chen's military advisor said. "This should be over quickly." "Should be," Chen agreed. "But Admiral Thakmore has had 2 years to prepare. Intelligence suggests he's developed some kind of new weapon." "What kind of weapon?" "The kind that could destroy entire star systems," Chen said quietly. "He's planning to use it if we attack. Not just on our fleet, on every world that joined the Alliance." The holographic display zoomed in on the hegemony fleet. At its center was a massive vessel unlike anything Chen had ever seen. It was more like a mobile space station than a ship, bristling with weapons and surrounded by energy fields that hurt to look at. "The final Dominion," Chen said, reading the intelligence report. "Thakmore's doomsday ship. If he can't rule the galaxy, he'll destroy it." "Ma'am," her aide said, "Commander Park is requesting permission to begin the attack." Chen looked at the display again. 20,000 ships against 1,000. It should be simple. But she knew that simple solutions often came with terrible costs. "Open a channel to Admiral Thakmore," she ordered. The screen flickered, showing the bridge of the final Dominion. Admiral Thakmor looked older than Keithavar, his scales darker and his eyes filled with rage. Behind him, his crew worked at stations covered with weapons controls. "Dr. Chen," Thakmor snarled, "come to watch the end of your precious alliance?" "I've come to offer you the same choice we offered Admiral Keithvar," Chen replied. "Surrender and help us build a better galaxy. Continue fighting and face the consequences." Thakmor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You think you've won? You think your alliance of weaklings can defeat the might of the true hegemony?" "Yes," Chen said simply. "I do." "Then you're about to learn what real power looks like," Thakmor said. "I have weapons that can crack planets in half. I have bombs that can make stars go supernova. If I can't rule this galaxy, then no one will." "You would destroy billions of innocent lives just to hurt us?" Chen asked. "I would destroy everything rather than let inferior species contaminate the galaxy," Thakmor replied. "That's the difference between us, human. You're weak. You care about things that don't matter. I care only about victory." Chen nodded slowly. "You're right. That is the difference between us." She gestured to someone off-screen. "Computer, implement Directive Omega." "Directive Omega confirmed," a mechanical voice replied. "All units stand by for final protocol activation." On the display, Admiral Thakmor's expression changed from rage to confusion. "What is Directive Omega?" "It's what we hoped we would never have to use," Chen said. "It's what humans are capable of when we stop holding back." Around the hegemony fleet, space itself began to change. Reality twisted and bent as massive machines that had been hidden throughout the system activated. These weren't ships or weapons. They were something else entirely. "For 2 years," Chen explained, "we've been building this. Not weapons of destruction, but tools of creation. We learned to remake matter at the quantum level. We learned to rewrite the laws of physics in small areas of space. The machines were becoming visible now, emerging from folds in space-time like flowers blooming in a garden made of stars. They surrounded the hegemony fleet completely, creating a sphere of altered reality." "You want to see what real power looks like?" Chen asked. "Real power isn't the ability to destroy. Real power is the ability to create, the ability to change, the ability to make something better than what existed before." Admiral Thakmor tried to fire his weapons, but nothing happened. His doomsday devices, his planet-cracking bombs, his star-killing missiles, none of them would work. The altered space around his fleet had made such weapons impossible. "You can't destroy anything in that field," Chen explained. "The laws of physics there simply don't allow for that kind of energy release. Your weapons have been reduced to harmless light shows." "Impossible," Thakmor whispered. "No," Chen said. "Just very, very difficult. It took us 50 years to develop the theory, another 20 to build the machines, and the combined knowledge of 63 species to make it work." The field was stabilizing now. Inside it, the hegemony ships were trapped but unharmed. Their crews were alive and healthy, but their weapons were useless. "This is your choice," Chen said. "You can stay in that field forever, safe but powerless. Or you can come out and help us build the galaxy we all deserve." "Never," Thakmor snarled. "I will never surrender to inferior species," Chen sighed. "Then you'll stay where you are. The field will keep you alive indefinitely. Maybe someday you'll change your mind." She turned to her communications officer. "Broadcast on all frequencies. Tell every species in the galaxy that the war is over. The hegemony has been defeated. The galaxy is free. What about them?" the officer asked, pointing to the trapped hegemony fleet. "They made their choice," Chen said. "Now they live with it." She walked to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Across the galaxy, trillions of beings were celebrating their freedom. Worlds that had been enslaved for centuries were building new governments. Species that had been enemies were learning to work together. It wasn't perfect. There would be problems, conflicts, disagreements, but for the first time in galactic history, those problems would be solved through negotiation instead of conquest. "Ma'am," her aide said, joining her at the window, "there's one more thing. Admiral Keithvar is requesting permission to address the Alliance." "Put him through." Keithvar's image appeared on the screen. He looked different now, older but more peaceful. He wore the uniform of the Alliance, not the hegemony. "Dr. Chen," he said, "on behalf of the Zephyrian Republic, I want to thank you for showing us a better way." "Thank you for being willing to learn," Chen replied. "I have a question," Keithvar said. "You could have destroyed us completely. You had the power to eliminate every Zephyrian in the galaxy. Why didn't you?" Chen looked out at the stars, thinking about all the worlds being rebuilt. All the species learning to work together. All the children who would grow up in a galaxy without the hegemony's shadow. Because, she said, that's not who we are. We offered mercy because it was right. We unleashed our wrath because it was necessary. Now we offer choice because it is just, she paused, watching as ships from dozens of species worked together to build a new space station in orbit around a former slave world. This is who we choose to be, she said. This is who we've always been, even when you forced us to be something else. The transmission ended. Dr. Sarah Chen stood alone at the observation window, watching the galaxy heal. Somewhere in the distance, children from 100 different worlds were playing together in the light of alien suns, and for the first time in centuries the galaxy was at peace. Humanity had kept its promise. They had offered mercy, unleashed wrath, and finally delivered justice, and in the end, they had chosen to build rather than destroy. That, more than any weapon or technology, was what made them truly powerful.